what it looks like happened to me is, okay, so the governor wants to create this massive new government preschool program. Legislators have balked at that. They've said, some have said, hey, instead of creating this massive new government preschool program, why not just, if people need to get their kids into preschool, support private sector programs that already exist, come up with a way to do that. But it sounds like you and the governor may have come up with a good compromise that maybe gives a moderate boost to his pilot project on government preschool, but then also helps people get their kids into the private sector preschool programs. And the unions came out and blocked it. Do I have a good read on what happened?
Yeah, Aaron, you nailed it. That's exactly what it was. We, the governor and I sat down and with a lot of work came up with a compromise that wasn't everything either one of us wanted, but we could live with, and was a mixture of public and private providers. So it didn't. You remember back in 2015, that was my biggest objection to his preschool program, was that I'm not going to support anything that's going to run the private providers that have been providing a good service to the communities for years out of business, the ones in the church basements in our rural communities or in our cities. And, the education monopoly establishment, and I might add, not just the teachers union, the school board association, the school administrators, the rural schools, there's basically no difference between any of them anymore. They all run around in one pack up here in the Capitol together with one message: give us more money. And on this instance, they were more interested in preserving their monopoly, and they were too afraid of a little competition, so they basically killed the bill and voted against kids, in my opinion. Yeah,
well, hey, you know what? I got to pat the governor on the back for this then, because, which might be shocking to some folks, but he came out really strongly after they rejected this, blaming special. He said, quote, thousands of 4-year-olds and their families will go without preschool, all because of petty politics and special interests that no longer represent the best interests of our youngest Montanans. And because he sent that out, boy, the liberal activists and some of the teachers union lobby folks are just angry with the governor this morning because he kind of called them out on this deal. That's really interesting.
He really did, Aaron. I had the same thing on my notes I jotted down to talk to you about, and it's hard for me to say too, because you and I don't agree with this governor on very much at all, but you have to give him credit. There was no political upside for him to take on the teachers union for this bill. He did it because he thought it was the right thing to do, and it took courage and it took leadership, and I've got to give him credit for it.
Well, and and then on the other hand, I'd imagine it's got to be pretty frustrating too, because he's approaching the end of almost 8 years as governor now, and potentially running for president. And at the end of the day, I don't know about you, but having a title, that might be nice for a little while, but that doesn't really do anything for you in the long term. In the long term, I think any Montanan, any American wants to say, what did I actually accomplish? Because people forget you, they forget your title, but if you can get something. So he's probably at the end of his term now saying, hey, I need to get something done. I need to accomplish something, and this is something he's wanted to do, and the special interest came up to attack it.
Yeah, it did. It's disappointing. It shows the power of the lobbyists. It shows the power of the education monopoly community, which is all in one, as I said earlier. And yeah, it's disappointing when the lobbyists and the special interests have more power up here than the elected officials do.
Yeah, and it's just a steady stream. I mean, heck, it. You're from Miles City, and you talk to people back in your hometown all the time. They can't just hop on a little car ride to Helena every day. They can't be there for every hearing, and so as a result, lawmakers don't get to hear from them. They don't get to hear from the people every day, but they hear from this long line and stream of lobbyists and activists who usually are the same people testifying on every single piece of legislation, and it makes it look like the majority supports A, B, or C, when in reality the rest of the people in Montana are like, no, that's not what we want to see happen.
That's exactly right, and I'm sorry, and this will draw down some ire on me, but people out there who listen to out there listening in your audience who are members of school boards, if you think your school boards association represents anything besides the teachers union, you are mistaken, because I've not seen it. I can't remember the last bill that the School Boards Association testified in opposition to the teachers union. I mean, they learned a couple sessions ago that if they all just hang together in a big block, they get more money, which is all they're basically interested in.
Interesting, because I would have assumed that the School Board Association might have been opposed to to it, because I know, like, for example, a lot of the rural schools have some very serious concerns with expanding government pre-K, because they're saying this is not what our schools are designed for. Where our teachers are not trained to be preschool teachers. It's a whole different bag. So I just assumed that the school boards just didn't like the expansion of government-funded preschool, but in reality, they were just doing whatever the teachers union lobby wanted then, huh?
Yeah, the representative for the School Boards Association got up and said basically the exact same testimony as the teachers union did. We can't support any money at all going to private providers. And if you look at states around the union, and you've seen this data, that have some sort of voucher or charter or school choice programs, even the most open of them, the K-12 is the behemoth in the room, always has been, always will be. The most market penetration these privates have gotten is 10 to 15%. So you're not talking about a lot. You're talking about maybe a couple dozen private preschool providers, like I said, in church basements or community halls around the state that want to step up and do some quality specs and be part of this program. And the education monopoly killed it because they're not willing to share the pie, even 10 to 15%.
Yeah, and I just thought it was really interesting to see, like, some of the activists with the Montana AFL-CIO labor union who were really outspoken against this preschool deal, because they didn't want to support private sector preschool programs or church preschool, you name it, whatever the preschool program might be. And all I could sit back and thinking is, if I'm a labor union worker at, a mine in Colstrip or wherever that might be, I'm pretty sure I want to see my kids in preschool, whether it's the government preschool or the church preschool or the great one that somebody started up as a business. So are they really representing the union members here, or just the special interest circle of friends there in Helena, I guess?
Exactly. I talked to a friend of mine this morning who's a Democrat but a good guy, and he said he was upset with the bill because he supported the compromise the governor and I reached. And he said, I support unions and I support 4-year-olds. But the difference is I don't have 4-year-olds telling me to vote against unions.
Interesting. Yeah, well, the 4-year-olds, it sounds like
I've sure got unions telling me to vote against 4-year-olds.
Wow, that's interesting. And it sounds like now some people are acting worse than 4-year-olds because they don't like this, because they don't like the response after their special interest lobbying killed the legislation. Representative Eric Moore, appreciate you calling in with your busy schedule. Great to hear from you.
Great. Thanks, Aaron. Talk to you later.
All right, appreciate it. Yeah.